Alright, y'all, what's up? So, let's get it straight into it. Over the past few years, as I've been able to acquire my own weed and be able to have more freedom to go around and smoke it and whatnot, I've generally struggled with managing my consumption, right? Sometimes I'll be stoned as hell all day, every day. Sometimes I'll be, stone cold sober and be demonizing the damn thing. And recently I started to realize it wasn't so much that smoking weed was so harmful or staying sober was so good. It's just putting myself through this cycle is more mentally jarring than actually smoking weed or not smoking weed. Because as I began to realize, right, as I've begun to realize with a lot of things, when I try to live a certain way and when I don't try to live a certain way, generally the results of my life are the same. The only thing that's different is I get just really OCD in my head about things. Like if I'm trying to live righteously or whatever, I'm not smoking weed, I'm eating clean, I'm doing this, it becomes so stressful and such a hassle and such a barrier within my own mind, I end up sabotaging myself. When, sometimes in my life, I'll go through phases naturally where, hey, I don't really want to eat a lot of meat or fast food right now. Hey, I want to research, these spiritual topics. Hey, I want to meditate more. Hey, I want to be more conscious, right? I naturally get into these zones. And I wanted to reconcile, my issues managing my marijuana consumption. Now, whenever I would try to take a break, it would always be something pulling me back in. I always like to give this anecdote. I remember earlier this year, I was going sober, I was not fucking with weed, and I'd always get in this head state, which ended up being pretty toxic of, I'm not gonna smoke it, it's bad for me, I'm not gonna smoke it, and just get so in my head about it, and I would avoid it. But then I had a stomach virus, and I tried Imodium, Pepto-Bismol, Motrin, Tylenol, you name it. But the only thing that helped relieve nausea was the very thing I was trying to avoid. Them carts, bruh. And then I feel like that was just God showing me like, look, bro, you can't just paint this complex thing with a broad brushstroke. Like, some of y'all can. Some of y'all could say, oh, weed, avoid it completely, it's all bad for me. And I get that. But for me personally, and I'm gonna get into why me personally it's a bit different, I've realized that throughout trying to manage my weed consumption, even when I try to not smoke and try and see it in a bad light, it's God showed me it's not a negative thing. Like weed is not a negative, it's how you use it, right? Now, that incident with the stomach virus, that clearly showed its medicinal properties, but most people, they don't just smoke weed when their stomach hurts or they have pain. They smoke it because they stoners, they like to get lit. I was gonna clean my room until I got high type vibes. And I'm not with that. That's why these carts, man, they're crack. Carts are the crack of the weed game, and you can't convince me otherwise, bro. Because it should not be, actually allowed in life that I could just be sitting here 1 second and then hit this weird little flash drive alien dick, and then I'm the highest in the room, no Travis Scott. Like that, the ability to do that, it's too intoxicating, literally. Like the fact, I feel like that's what really facilitated my weed consumption into an addiction, into this need to be high. Now, granted, I don't feel like that anymore. Like whenever I start feeling like I need to be high, that's when I start to just get off of that, because that's an unhealthy space to be in. But the fact that carts are so easy access, you could wake up in the morning, immediately hit it, no one's gonna smell it, you just gonna be high. That is way too enticing. It is way too enticing, and don't feel bad if you're in that state, because it's human nature, bro. Imagine if our cavemen ancestors had the ability, but before people would, all these leagues of human history, they always had alcohol, palm wine, drink it constantly, get drunk, right? But imagine being able to be intoxicated literally off rip, just boom, I'm high. That's way too enticing for any human being. You know what I'm saying? I feel like as humans, we're naturally inclined toward wanting to be in an altered state of mind. It's a pretty human thing, if you ask me, to want to be in an altered state of mind. And that's why I had to nip the carts in the bud, no pun intended, because I didn't want to keep having that easy access, because I would start to get really cloudy. I would start to get damn near fucking schizophrenic smoking them carts all the time. Like everything would just be thrown into loop. And I'm one of those people who, if I don't have a sense of self and I get the feeling that my sense of self is being played with or there's no grounding there, I start to fucking lose it. There's no grounding in reality once I start hitting the carts, because everything is just cart talk. And now every thought in my head is either a random thought and then a thought questioning that thought, saying, is that the cart talking or me? So being stoned all the time, I am not with that at all. But then I would be in these phases with the carts, right? And then I get off of that shit, and all my executive dysfunction would come back. Now, a lot of people like to paint me as ADHD. They're like, oh yeah, you're definitely ADHD. People who I've barely met, I'll tell them one thing about me, like when I would drink coffee to fall asleep, and they'd immediately be like, yeah, that's because you're ADHD. No diagnosis, no nothing. I have never gotten a diagnosis for ADHD. Whenever I do the screenings, I've even done screenings with professionals, and I check some of the boxes, but not all of them. I describe myself, well, I'm definitely neurodivergent. I'm a neurodiverse individual, all right? Or somebody on Reddit said neurospicy recently. I like that. I'm a neurodiverse, neurospicy, whatever you want to call it. I may not be all the way ADHD or all the way autistic, but you know, I definitely have a lot of traits, and I've had them since I was a kid. You know what I'm saying? A lot of these things people say about, you know, neurodivergent kids, oh, I don't even have to list specific examples. Like, bro, I was in the gifted program. If you were in the gifted program at school, enough said. Like, and I don't mean that to say like I'm super smart. I'm just saying, like, a lot of us who were put into those environments as kids because of those, you know, precocious traits we displayed early on, and later on you feel kind of burned out. It's a very typical, you know, neurodivergent experience. It is not just that. It's, you know, early signs that I had of pattern recognition and memory, and I had insane hyper-focused interest. Like, bro, I was so, like, it would be different things like old Nickelodeon show and just the weirdest things I would be like very hyper-focused on. Even my brother would notice it, and he'd always be like, oh, my brother's always, he was talking to other people about me, he'd be like, yeah, he's always into some weird old things, like he's always fixated on old things. He'd always tell me, oh, you're so obsessed with this, you're obsessed with that. And now, with my adult lens and knowing what I know now, it was hyperfixations, right? And I say that to say this, all these signs of neurodivergence have been with me since I was a child. And that dispels within me the doubts that I have of, oh, was this caused by depression? Was this caused by weak? No, I've always been a neurodiverse individual. Where that starts to affect oneself is, well, you're prone to depression and executive dysfunction. It's very hard. As you can see, sometimes I can't even come up with video ideas to post for y'all. My executive dysfunction is a problem. And because I don't test high enough to have to get actually medicated, I have tried Adderall at times, like just getting straight Adderall. I mean, that sounds sketchy as hell, but look, man, here and there, some people have had it and they're like, oh, do you want to try it? And I'm like, sure. And I remember one time I took some and I felt good. Like I didn't feel hyped up. I just felt like a train was going on in the background. I felt good. I just felt productive. I'm like, oh, this is what normal people feel like on normal days. I can pay attention in class. My mind's not going everywhere all the time. So, hey, maybe down the line, some professional will actually say that, okay, maybe you do need to get medicated, and that's gonna be super lit and awesome. But the medication that I have for right now is moderate weed use, right? For all my stoners out there, we know the difference between cart and flower is huge. Fuck carts. Carts, like, they're cool at first, and then they start to get very, very just a heavy presence in your life. I switched to flower and edibles, like that just moderating my consumption that way, it allows me to be familiar with my sober self, because I'm not high right now. I'm completely sober right now. And the fact that in my day-to-day life, I can remain in tune with my sober self, and I know what Kyle the person, what Kyle spiritually, what I want and value, and I can be clear. The mental clarity is invaluable to me. I love mental clarity. I love being super clear about however I feel. It's just that when I'm too steeped in that mental clarity, I have a depressive mind. My mindset starts to get very bleak in one track. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna just go to work, and I'm gonna go try and do school, and I'm gonna try to do this, and I'm gonna, you know, in my life is, life to me looks like, oh, people just go to work and die, and people just, you know, they live, and everything is just, I get very nihilistic, right? And you could say part of it's depression, you could say part of it's neurodivergence, you could say part of it's a symbiotic relationship between the two, which it probably is, but I'm not living at my full potential doing that. And I know some of y'all weed quitters will be like, oh, you didn't give it long enough time. You gave it a month. You should give it 2 or 3 months. Look, man, frankly, I'm 22 years old, okay? I need to get a move on in my life. I need to be making moves, bro. Like, I'm not trying to be sitting on my hands deconstructing my depression. Trust me, I've been sober and depressed for long periods of time, and it's just that. It's not like I'm like, okay, I'm gonna be motivated to do more things. No, my executive dysfunction makes me do things resentfully. So to the point where when I actually do get up and decide to do things, it's not even because I actually want to. It's because I know deep down somewhere I should be doing them, but it doesn't make me feel better. Like, I have the type of depression that long walks and meditation just, it don't really fix, okay? It comes and it goes, and it comes and it goes. And I feel like if I can smoke a joint here and there, and that helps me with my executive dysfunction, I'm going to do that. I don't see weed as a wholly negative thing. For me personally, I see moderate weed consumption as a net positive. Because when it's been a while and I do smoke, I'm like, oh, I can laugh again. Oh, I can be horny again. Oh, I actually, you know, I deeply want to do things. Like, when I'm sober and more depressed, I'm like, damn, man, I really don't want to do anything, because the logic, the toxic ass logic in my brain, which is kind of true, is already too red-pilled. And I don't mean that in the cringy, fresh and fit way. I mean it as in, like, there's really no point to any of this shit. And I'm just way too aware of that while I'm sober. I'm like, okay, why try and do, there's no point. Why try and be successful with this? I could just lose the success. Knowing me, I'll probably be inconsistent. But, you know, being able to tap into that feminine energy with weed, because that's what weed is, very feminine energy. And I just explained in my last video that we need a mix of both to ascend. So naturally, my brain is steeped too far in masculine energy. But when I hit some of that weed, I'm a little more compassionate. I'm like, okay, I actually feel the drive to want to create, to want to experiment, to want to actually go out, and I can like let myself live a little bit. I can let myself have a break from the constant, life has no meaning, there's no point to any of this shit, all I do is get hurt. Very toxic narratives. And I know I should try to fix them. But even when I do try and fix them, I'm just like, you know, I'm a very bleak guy, right? And I'm not in the position where, you know, I'm living a life I want to live, or I'm in a place that I want to be, or I have the freedom to get in tune with myself naturally. I gotta get up and do stuff. I gotta try and find jobs. I gotta try and get a move on in my life. I gotta try and get on my own. I gotta try and get to that point where I can have the freedom to explore a completely sober life and actually heal. Because all the issues I have, I don't have the time or the resources to really go deep down within myself and solve them. I still gotta wake up and pay bills at the end of the day. So if I can spend a decent amount of time getting familiar with my sober self, and then also every once in a while, not every once in a while, semi-regularly, you know, tap in and, you know, just bring myself back to that self that's excited about, yeah, I'm gonna film these YouTube videos, I'm gonna make these songs, I'm gonna put this out, I'm gonna do this art, and I can, you know, my sober self and my high self help each other, because I'm so cognizant of my sober self, I know what deep down I actually value. And then, you know, when I smoke and get these ideas, now I can go back with my sober self and really have the meticulousness and the clarity of mind to carry out my ideas. And when I'm high, I can be more receptive, feminine energy, I can be more receptive to those ideas. Because I'm gonna tell y'all straight up, bro, when I'm not smoke, like, I'm just a bleak guy. I'm like, why post on YouTube? I don't have anything to say. I'll just say some dumb spiritual shit. You know what I'm saying? And I have a very logical, nihilistic, down-to-earth view of everything. But when I smoke a little bit, and just a little bit does a lot. Now I'm okay. I'm more familiar with that side of myself that can come up with ideas and can be more receptive and actually just be open to living life just because, you know? That masculine mindset, everything has to have a purpose. When you realize deep down in this universe, nothing really has any purpose and things are just happening, I get bored. I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna be a conduit for whatever's happening and just keep on doing it, like whatever. At my best, I'm just very detached and still neutralized and still just despondent. So why not spark some of that passion in me by sparking a jam? Because if it wasn't this, bro, it'd be antidepressants and antipsychotics. I don't work well with those. I've tried. And I told y'all, I don't test enough for ADHD meds. So that's my thesis on why, you know, a lot of these self-help niggas, they say, oh, weed, put it down, don't be smoking. Well, a lot of them niggas aren't fucking neurodivergent, and a lot of these niggas aren't me. For me personally, semi-regular, controlled, moderate, keyword moderation. I know it's cliche, but moderation really is key. Moderate weed use is a net positive for me. And moderate weed use is probably the reason why I got up in front of this camera and thought to even do this video. So thank you, marijuana. I respect it. It is a spirit, and I respect it wholeheartedly. I love it, but I refuse to abuse it, because that's when the problems start. It may not be such a net positive for you. You might have to cut it out, but when I control it, it's a net positive for me. Thank you for watching, and will I smoke a couple hours from now?